Welcome to SonarFeed, episode 269.
Nice.
I'm Mickey Turner. You can find me on the Twitters at TurnerESQ. And to my right, your left, I guess, is that the right way to
I
put
think
it?
that's the direction.
Yes.
Yeah.
We got Matt Pentz, who is our guest this week. And Matt, why don't you just give us a quick introduction?
All right, so covering the team for the Athletics still predominantly. Also have a book coming out tomorrow, The Sound and the Glory, finally being released after what feels like forever. It's all very exciting. That's where I'm at.
Yep, and you've got a book release party tomorrow, is that correct?
Yes, tomorrow night at Rhine House, Seattle from 6 to 8. All are welcome, kid-friendly, more the merrier. That would be great.
So you're only going to like German-themed pubs? Is that the
I
deal?
know, right? It seems like this week has a theme.
Okay.
Yeah, and I also have the extended family in the house who's also going to be making a tour of the Seattle German beer halls, apparently.
Very fun. I hope you like. Well, you do. I see your mugs. You guys are good.
And to Matt's right.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
That's right. Tom Biro, a.k.a. I don't know. What am I, Weigel today? I'm not even sure.
I think, yeah, you're producing because I don't know anything about that stuff.
Tom Biro, a.k.a. I don't know, guy with the computer who showed up, whatever it is. Ugo is going to be making an appearance this evening. We don't have David Clark. He is at home watching and probably will be trash talking to us in the chat. So, again, if
Sounds
you're at home
right.
viewing or wherever the heck you are, if you've got questions for Matt, feel free to throw them in there or on the Twitters or wherever. We'll hopefully catch most of them. So you've obviously been on the show a couple of times, three times, a handful of times. So why don't we just jump in? So you've got a book that's super cool, totally different thing from what you do on a regular basis.
Yeah,
little longer form, slightly different process.
Yeah.
So other than the obvious, why'd you choose to go that route?
I mean, that was always kind of a long-term goal of mine. Just kind of you look at your career bucket list as somebody who's been a big reader forever. Book was on there, and I never really knew if I would have the opportunity or the bandwidth to do that. And then was on the beat for the Times for a while. After the 2016 season happens, ended up just getting laid off through that big round of layoffs. All of a sudden, I had a lot of free time. That season had so much going on. There were so many characters, and I figured if there was ever a time that I had the expertise and the time to actually do this, it was now.
Yeah.
So spent some time, put together a sample chapter, a whole proposal. Took a little while to sell that off, but yeah, it's cool to kind of see it come to fruition now.
Pitch a couple places.
A couple. It actually ended up working out shockingly easy from that end.
That's
of
good.
Because I messaged Grant Wall, the Sports Illustrated writer who wrote a book about David Beckham's Galaxy that did really well about a decade ago. Sort of hit him up on Twitter and just what would you recommend? How would you recommend even getting this together?
Yeah.
He recommended his agent, who recommended another agent, who was like, oh, I have a buddy up in Toronto whose publisher is in the market for an American soccer book, and then pitched them directly and kind of went from there.
That sounds too easy. Go
I know,
back
right?
and make it harder. Mickey's over there taking notes.
Yeah, right.
He's
Actually, me and Matt did have a conversation about book writing and all that kind of stuff. So definitely got some good advice from him. So we'll see how that goes. But we're here to talk about Matt's book. So we'll go.
Not future Mickey Turner books.
Not future projects at this point.
Okay.
So
cool. All right. So process-wise, I mean, slightly different, but maybe not altogether different from what you do on a regular basis. And you're still writing for a handful of places, primarily
For sure.
Athletic.
Yeah.
So what was fun about putting the book together?
Yeah, I mean, so this was probably the harder part then, was that first month and a half was really hard because it is a different style.
Right.
Than you're writing on it. You have to, just the narrative part I was okay with, the length of it, because I just kind of broke it up into this chapter will be about this person.
About how many pages is it?
It's about 200,
Okay.
Give or take. So pretty quick read.
Yeah.
But that
Lots of
200
pictures.
felt like a lot.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so just the whole process of being able to write narratively and in scenes.
Yeah.
And it took me probably a month and a half of writing and then trashing immediately and writing again before it got to the point where I'm like, okay, I can do it in this style. And then just kind of built from there. So yeah, I turned the manuscript around in probably about 4.5 months.
Okay.
The first month and a half was all sort of just trash. So 3 months of really quick writing, But yeah, so I just enjoyed the process by the end of kind of figuring out that I could do it, kind of going back and digging in a little bit deeper on some of these guys and really being able to flesh out the characters of Schmetzer and Garth Lagerwey and Lodero, and that was all pretty fun.
So before we get into like what didn't make the book, that's a cool thing that you want to tell us, because then we can follow you and people should be paying The Athletic to read what you're doing on a regular basis.
I agree.
But cutting room floor is a big thing with any project like this. What's like top 2-3 things that people need to be on the lookout for? Not to give up the ghost, but like what are the reasons people should just pick it up?
Yeah, I think not necessarily the cutting room floor stuff, but the stuff that was most interesting to me was sort of the locker room dynamics and also kind of the front office dynamics, just because like that was a year of massive turnover from Ziggy Schmid going to sort of Garth Lagerwey taking the reins. So being able to kind of dig into that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily a power struggle. That might be a little bit too dramatic, but there was sort of
You heard it here.
Maneuvering behind
Power
the scenes.
struggle.
So like just those personal dynamics and how that came together on the front office side versus the locker room side, and how all these egos coexist and then go all together and ended up winning a championship. Like being able to put all that together was pretty cool.
Okay. I was hoping for more than that, Matt Pentz. No, I'm just kidding.
We can keep it going.
That's good. But the slow start, though, they were fake news, I thought. So I thought that was a pretty normal season that we've had the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, I know.
You agree with that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
No, you don't. No. Anyway, so, what's something that you think maybe you approached or, like, looked at differently in putting the book together that, like, even doing what you're doing now for The Athletic, it's just very different from what you were doing for the Times.
Yeah.
Are there things you just did differently in process, whether it was follow-up interviews or just other things like that were just different in general?
Different and mostly better, I think, just because the interviews you have to go more in depth to be able. I think that you can actually probably see this in my writing now, and then it's probably more scene-oriented and a little bit more narrative. And to be able to do that, you kind of have to go in and like ask follow-up questions on all those different things. What was this person doing at this time? What was the locker room like? All that. So I think I was able to get better at that, and I think that probably even comes out now when you look at the way that I'm writing for The Athletic.
It's because you're motivated by those little emojis at the bottom of the page. It's just no smiley faces. I did a bad job today. So I think I would just love to hear anecdotes and just interesting things, like, again, whether they are in the book or maybe it didn't make a particular narrative, but it's just interesting bits.
Yeah.
Anybody will be surprised to maybe hear a lot about or from?
This is definitely not a from, because, I mean, Clint Dempsey was obviously never all that forthcoming. But I think what was interesting in talking to some of the different people around the team was how early in that year that there had been warning signs about his heart condition, and sort of the extent that they were worried about that earlier on. Like, it went as far as to they had implanted a tracker in his chest a month or so before they flagged it in the Portland game, and he didn't even actually notice anything that year or that during that specific game. He had thought he had episodes where he had felt something during a game and been worried about it. He didn't notice anything in the Portland game at all, but his heart monitor had actually picked that up, and that's why he got shut down for the year. And so that sort of whole episode and background and tracking that whole year was really interesting to be able to tell a little bit more in detail.
And I think that's stuff that, again, we'll probably never get to hear everything about, just especially given who it was affecting.
Yeah.
But, like, pretty serious, intense thing with a national team player, let alone, one of the local superstars here. And that's now, too, with EJ as well, having had some pretty significant heart conditions. Just super interesting to see high performance, like superstar, globally recognizable people, having that kind of situation. Is that, just out of curiosity, does it feel like Sounders or maybe sports in general are starting to be a lot more, let's call it proactive, not precautionary, but kind of like just getting people to go to the doctor on a regular basis? Like, is
that
technology really changing this kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that there are the way that they track these guys now through like analytics and like checking their just like data every day on heart rate versus like all the different. It's wild how much they have that down to a science, and I would imagine that will end up flagging these things more often. But it is a little bit scary with Clint and Eddie Johnson. It's like there's only really so much you can do.
Right.
When it comes to a heart condition like that. And part of that story with Clint, I think, that surprised me digging more into it was you don't think of him as a very, like, vulnerable guy. Like, he just kind of was always that kind of crusty sort of captain leader type guy. But there was a scene with one of his teammates in Orlando where he had scored a hat trick, came off the field and like turns to a teammate and like said that his heart was racing and he felt a little bit weird, and that was about a week and a half before he got shut down. And the teammate kind of was like, oh, like you just scored a hat trick, like of course your heart's racing. Up.
Yeah.
And then Clint like immediately laughed it off and was like, oh yeah, you're right. And then the wall goes back up.
Right.
But being able to kind of get a little bit more of those glimpses with him, with how serious that was, I thought was kind of telling in some ways.
So that was that game was obviously just after Ziggy got fired.
Yes.
So what can you tell us about kind of the Ziggy portion of the book? I know you spent a lot of time with him, getting information for a couple of chapters.
Yeah, for sure. He was great. I mean, I can't speak highly enough about his generosity with this whole project. It never would have come together if he wasn't as open with me. Because really, we were talking about sort of the timeline and me putting it together, and I was sort of on the fence about being able to even do the book, and he agreed to sort of spend a couple days with me in L.A. to kind of have some more in-depth interviews to kind of put all that together, and that ended up being a lot of the chapter that I sold to get the book made. So he was really an integral part of how it all came together. And so, yes, I really did go in detail on his background and sort of what that year was like for him in a couple different ways, just because I think that he was a really fascinating man who had a lot of different layers to him. So I hope I was able to kind of do that justice just throughout the book. I don't know that there's all that much new as it comes to him, but just kind of digging comprehensively into his background and how it all fit together, I think was a little bit interesting.
Do you get much into his feelings about that season, obviously being fired and then watching the team win the championship shortly thereafter?
Yeah, a little bit, but I think that what was interesting to me is going down there, it would have been, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 months after that MLS Cup. And I think that the Sounders had eventually found out that I went down and talked to Ziggy. And I think they were sort of really paranoid about, what's this book going to look like?
Napalm.
Yeah, talking to Ziggy not that long, but I think it's testament to sort of his overall character that I mean, he was never vindictive in any way. And he was open about the fact that he still had hurt feelings about all of it, but he ended up getting a beer with Schmetzer and the coaching staff the night before that game in Toronto. And just he was really always sort of the bigger man about all of that. So, so he definitely was open about some of that, but it never came from a place, I don't think, of him trying to be I'm telling my side of the story to kind of drag down
expose. I was looking for the expose.
I know, but that was just never him, right? I mean, that never seemed to really be his personality.
And you can't really blame him for his feelings, given the time he put into the team. On the other side of it, the team was performing terribly, so someone had to go. The timing was such that it made sense. It was just unfortunate. So
it's hard to argue with in retrospect. And I was thinking about this before the game on Saturday when they honored him and had the tifo that sort of mentioned him and bringing his family in. And I'm sure that there are still some hurt feelings there. In retrospect, it's sort of hard to argue with the results there.
We're being chided on microphone usage.
Got it. Better.
Is that Dave?
Let's hope so.
Dave yelling at us.
But it's hard to argue in retrospect with how it all sort of came together afterward, but it is a little bit sad in retrospect that it kind of had to all end in that particular way.
What was the hardest part about the book? Together.
Yeah, the hardest part was definitely that first month and sort of being able to put together the style that I wanted and to have it be all there were just I've usually been able to kind of just sit down and just write, and like you have to edit and rewrite and
Right.
stuff, but like it's usually usable.
Gotcha.
But there was like a month where I was just like staring at a blank page, writing stuff
man.
that was awful,
Yeah.
immediately having to trash it and then
Change
try
it
again
20
the next day.
times Or 200 times.
Yeah, so that
Totally
was
get that.
definitely the most challenging stretch.
You were like every sitcom with a writer ever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know, and I had never been that cliche before, so it was like, yeah, it's not great, not a great stretch.
That's kind of, I've started obviously writing more too, so that's something you can understand. Obviously not on a book scale, but it's just, anybody who's ever written anything, kind of
like,
has
I
that.
did a
It is
presentation for work.
trash until it's not.
Yeah, dude, I did a big presentation for work, and I was up till like 3 a.m. the night before, and I was like, oh my God, I changed that like 10, 20 times.
Yeah.
I ended up with the original, too. I went back to my original format. It's
Yeah.
so frustrating. Ah.
Sounds about right. Also, by the way, Ugo is here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of dipped in the end there.
Yeah. Slide in like a ninja.
You did just slide into the DMs,
Which is very
up here on the
impressive, I have to
stage.
say.
Yeah.
Nice. We
Yeah.
did the open without
Big
you.
guy, good feet, man. I got good footwork.
Nice.
Speaking of footwork, you guys already touched a little bit on the media game. Not yet. Not yet.
We
no,
didn't get
we're,
there.
and we're not going to get there if I have
All right.
No,
anything to say about it.
we are definitely going to get there.
Yeah.
And did we hear what your rating was?
I was not rated, it was pretty much
What?
just the Sounder at Heart.
Yeah, I think it was
guys
just the Sounder at Heart
Just
guys.
them?
got
Okay, which
rated,
sounds like
which-
that's what Dave was saying, but
Yeah, which
I wanted
made
to
me
make
happy.
sure that was a reality. Nice.
Yeah.
What about the editing process? How was that? Just getting the book down to what you wanted.
Yeah, it ended up my publisher, which is ECW Press out of Toronto. The guy who was in charge of my book, who picked up the project, Michael Holmes, he was great throughout the whole process. He got back big picture edits pretty quick. Really wasn't as much rewriting as I was expecting, frankly, which was good. Maybe
Yeah,
it's because
right.
I self-edited so much at the beginning of the process.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were really supportive the whole way through. Some really good sort of big picture ideas. But yeah, it was more just the overall support from them was really invaluable, I think.
Great. So, what are you doing as far as publicity is concerned, or what have you done to kind of get the word out of the book, aside from this
Yeah,
show
so I've
and
done
tomorrow's?
this. I've been on KJR a couple times the last couple weeks. Have the launch party tomorrow, which we referenced. I'm doing a couple different sort of book reading events. The first one's on Bainbridge Island at Eagle Harbor Books on the 16th. No, it's the 17th, the Sunday, St. Patrick's Day. So on the 17th at 3 in the afternoon. Going to be doing one up in Ravenna on April 11th, I believe, at the Third Pace Books up there, and maybe a couple coming together in the meantime. So making that little mini book tour.
That's awesome, dude. That's exciting.
Yeah, it's all definitely cool. It'll be cool to see tomorrow when that finally comes down. Okay, thanks, man.
Did you guys touch on how you decided on the name?
Of the
No.
book?
No. How did you decide?
So I ended up I could not get it. They gave me a deadline on we want your ideas on what we're gonna. And they had. I'm trying to. I wish I had written down the ideas that they had.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that they were terrible necessarily, but they were not about
They were terrible.
the three options they gave me. I did not like at all. And then they're like, well, if you want to have input, you need to give us
Yes,
something
yeah, right.
by this particular day. So I spent 2 days wandering around Elliott Bay looking at book titles, trying to be inspired by something. Eventually came up with The Sound and the Glory. I don't know it's the greatest title in the world,
I like
but
it.
I didn't hate it in the way that I hated the other ones.
Sometimes
So-
all you can get.
and that felt
what
like
you
a
gotta
big
go with.
win, given that I came right down to the wire on it.
Nice.
Headline writing is terrible. I hate
Yeah.
everything about it.
Yeah, it's a
the
different
worst.
skill set for
Yeah,
sure,
it's the
as you
worst.
know.
That's why the editors usually write the
Yeah.
headlines. Now, then you can complain about
Yeah,
terrible
what they said. Yeah,
headline that the editor
when it's totally
gave
out of
you,
context with
but-
the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or you get angry calls from MLS or U.S. Soccer headquarters about what something was written. So
Yeah. But yeah, so that's how that came together.
You probably violated the MLS supporter code of conduct by writing this book in general.
Yeah.
Like every rule book they have, I don't understand any of it.
it's all right. They'll change it in
It's
a couple
okay.
of days anyway. So.
Yeah, right.
Sounders probably get to have a 5th DP because you wrote this book. I think that's how the rules
That's
work.
how it works,
No one's
yeah.
really sure.
Yeah.
And a Zach Scott statue outside the stadium.
That would be. I hope they do that eventually. That would
Except
be
it
cool.
actually has to look like Zach Scott.
Didn't like the Beckham one.
No statue looks like anyone anymore. What happened to statue making? Or has statue making for all eternity been terrible and we just
Well, the
don't
Griffey
know
one
it?
was pretty good.
Yeah, the
I
Griffey
would
one's
say the
actually
Griffey
very
very
So
good.
that's
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
The exception that proves the
I
rule.
think it's-
Correct.
crap. You know, it's just
Well,
anything that's like a hand.
The comment was
hands-on
Michelangelo
craft,
died. I feel like that's
changing to the time.
we're
Bummer.
cutting off the line at the 1500s or whatever the hell it was.
We went a little bit deep. Deep cut right there. So, talk to us about what else you've been doing other than kind of prepping for your book. There's obviously Sounder season. We had a really long off season.
Yeah.
What did you do?
Went to South America, actually.
What?
Which was cool. Yeah, so went down to Colombia and Peru. For
Wow.
like 2.5 weeks, which was
Man,
great.
I'm jealous, man.
Yeah.
I was thinking of going to Colombia later this year. We're in Colombia.
Cartagena and Medellin, so we went to the
Ooh.
two, which were great. I had such a good time. We had Nico Moreno, who writes for Sounder at Heart. He
Yeah,
grew
yeah,
up in
yeah.
Medellin, so he
Nico's
kind of gave
man.
me, he gave me a whole rundown on what to do.
Okay,
So,
okay.
so I got down into the sun for.
I was like, you
About a
ate
month.
and
It was
drank
very
and
wise.
saw all the things.
Nice.
It was great. So that was great, but then I came back right into the snowstorm, and I feel like I'm even more sensitive to it now.
perfect.
It's like
Yeah.
you think you're like, I'm gonna get out for a couple weeks, and the winter's gonna feel like nothing. And I came back, it's like, no, I'm just like
You
even more
actually
sensitive to it.
Forgot that snow even was a thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was
right.
like 80 and sunny every day down there.
And
And then
how
I
did-
flew back the Friday of that snowstorm that rolled into Seattle like 3 weeks ago. It was
How did you
not
decide
ideal.
on the two countries? And did you catch any soccer down there?
We did. So we went to Independiente game.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it was their home opener, so we got there
Wow.
just in time for that, and it was great. We had such a good
Nice.
time. Yeah, it was. I had friends that had either visited those two countries or lived there, so it was just kind of going with a little bit more of a defined itinerary.
Gotcha.
And I'd wanted to get down to South America for a while, so it was
Yeah.
great. Yeah, the
Nice.
food was great. Yeah, sun was great. Soccer was fun.
It's good to get out of town
I know.
every so
Yeah.
often. So,
And I was able to, and Raul Rui Diaz being from Lima, did a little bit of groundwork for an upcoming feature there.
Oh, nice.
Can justify dipping out for 3 weeks. If you're like, oh yeah, like
perfect.
you
Yeah,
don't do-
research,
did you
obviously.
expense
I
that
didn't.
portion of your trip? Because you should.
I should, but that would be like even more ambitious though. Like, oh yeah, I'm not gonna really do anything for these 3 weeks, and you should pay for it. And I'm also gonna do one story maybe. Like
Right.
I'm justifying that I slipped away for a little while that way.
You just do it, and then you ask for forgiveness
Later.
later. Welcome to business, Matt Pentz.
Right?
Come
That's
on.
right. That's right, dude.
What are they going to do? Give you
That's
like
true.
a little unhappy smiley face at the athletic?
It's
That's the worst that can happen. Trust me.
Yeah.
It's the internet.
true. It's worth trying for sure.
Matt's eating some $3,000 expense that work kicks back to him.
Yeah, not ideal.
It's bad enough
The
like
greatest-
the CFO of the Athletic
greatest
flies
ceviche
out
in the world.
to your house and is like, no, take this back. So you come back. It snowed.
But it's soccer season again.
Right.
That-
So
yeah.
you came right back into it.
Yeah.
What's this off season been like, other than your travels and things? But obviously you had the book coming that was baked some time ago. Coming into this year, just having kind of a bummer of a ending of last season. What was different for you about this off season? For Sounder specifically.
Yeah, I think the lack of turnover sort of will make for a much better start to the season, which all the fans will have. For a writer, it has made it much more difficult because usually you have like, oh, here are these 6 new guys to write about, and they have-
Profile.
yeah, and they pretty much turned over all of the same difference makers, which again, it'll be good for them, but it wasn't a particularly good from like a storytelling aspect. But I think it was just kind of, it was a very chill off season for everybody around the club, and I think they kind of needed that after all the sort of drama and all these sort of really short off seasons.
It's weird. Then you don't have a slow start to the season when you actually have players.
Right.
It's really weird
Wow.
how that works out. But I think just jumping in, and we should talk a bit. We've got lots of time, so if we skip anything that you want to talk about, please just
Yeah,
interject.
double back
But
around.
I think what I heard a lot of people say, and I think even this group of us, we really expected Sounders to be able to score, honestly, like a shit ton of goals this
Yeah.
season, but also potentially let up a ton. Not on
Yeah.
Fry, but like you didn't really know what you were going to get from the defense, or there wasn't a 5th and 6th and 7th defender that you necessarily felt great about.
Yeah.
That fully operational battle station thing definitely showed up, for Saturday night's match, which was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's setting the bar. I mean, you never know. Expansion team, you never know where you're going to go from here. But was that what you would have expected to see from Sounders, having watched preseason matches and just practice in general? Like, is this what it felt like Schmetzer and the crew were building up for? Like, that they really thought this is what the club is like, what we saw the other night?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they definitely have very high expectations internally. I think that this team thinks that they're going to be really, really good, and you saw early evidence for that. And definitely it seemed like a lot of people were excited about the attack and maybe a little bit worried about the defensive side, which I understand. But I feel like for me it was almost the opposite. And that, I mean, Schmetzer is such, like, he was a defensive midfielder. Most of his assists, Jimmy Torroya was a defender. Tommy Dutu, goalkeeper. Gonzalo Pineda was a defensive midfielder, too. They all see the game very defensively. And if you look at their teams the last couple of years, I mean, they haven't always been very exciting, but they have always been hard to break down.
Right.
Yeah.
You look, even at his minor league teams, they were known for being very good defensively. Right. He knows how to coach that way. And yes, they had the attackers, and they looked great on Saturday, but that was what I was more skeptical about, was how that was all going to fit together and work going forward. And obviously, that was a very impressive start.
Run the other team ragged all day. It's like Morris and Rodriguez are just going to
Victor was just all over the place.
Yeah.
That was it's
fun.
funny just having talked to people who
fun.
are like, are we going to have this 4-4-2 thing where they just run up and down the sides of the field? Like, you have no idea.
Yes,
but
please.
There was a point where
all day
it was like the rec league game where some guy who's like the center back is like, yo, I'm getting my goal. And then they get their goal, and that was Rui Diaz. Like, he was like, yeah, I'm scoring. And you're like, all right.
It looked like they were running like basically a 3-man back line at points with Keehee, Marshall, and then Gustav would kind of, sit back.
Yeah.
And then, Smith and Leardom were just going down the touchline like, every, 10 minutes. And they were just, pretty dynamic for most of the match. I think there was like a 15-minute period where they weren't able to get the ball off Cincy for some reason or another. And I think they had that problem in preseason a little bit as well, where they just, I don't know if they weren't pressing like they wanted to. Just something didn't allow them to kind of get the ball. But aside from that, and that's what Schmetzer talked about in the post-game presser, he wasn't really happy with Gustav and Roldan's performance for portions of the game. So I think that's something that they'll hopefully be able to correct. But aside from that, obviously they were just fantastic for 85% of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, Victor, he was playing almost on a different level of everybody else on the field. And if he is like that all year,
oh my God,
and Jordan can provide that threat out wide, they are going to score millions of goals.
Right, it's just going to keep coming. It didn't feel like they were going to stop scoring. Like, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I think there were a few minutes, but other than that, you were like, okay, just keep going.
Yeah, and that's going to happen in a game anyway. You're not going to hold the ball for 90% possession. So, it may just be one of those lulls that they happen to run into. And so we'll see what happens when they play,
functional teams.
Yes, competent teams going forward.
Again, we've all seen, expansion teams come in and play decent games. Weird. They keep sending them all to Seattle to open their season. That's been a thing. Winning at home is great. It's a confidence booster no matter what. Do you think that kind of victory, especially having another match immediately at home, do you think it's just as big a confidence booster for them playing who they did versus, if it was a LA Galaxy or somebody like that they've had long history versus?
Yeah, maybe not quite as much, but I do think that given the sort of ongoing narrative of how they struggled and because of how they struggled in the preseason, beating anyone playing like that, I think it was
winning.
I think it was very good for them. Schmetzer even sort of admitted afterwards that it did feel like a sort of significant sort of narrative game for them.
Yeah,
and they certainly passed that test very impressively.
Yeah, and it wasn't. It didn't even feel like it was one of those things where the other team was just terrible and you killed them. Sounders were like, no, we're just rolling over you, which there is a difference. It's like that happens in just about any sport where, like, the other team just cannot put it together. Right. It wasn't that they really did put it together very much, but it truly felt like Sounders won that game. It wasn't just a bunch of dumb stuff happened.
Yeah, they should have scored, seven goals really. Rodriguez probably should have had, at least 2, probably 3 at certain points. So,
and even if the other team scored first with that goal, you just didn't see them flinch. Like, okay, we'll give you that. That was a nice goal. That's it. And then it just kept rolling, and the goals just didn't stop.
Yeah, it was different than obviously the LAFC game last year, where they were dominant as well, but just could not finish to save their lives and came out of there with a loss. And then that team was highly injured. They were missing probably 35 to 40% of the starters, 4 or 5 starters potentially, for most of the first 2 months of the season.
Pretty
So having a fully healthy team, you didn't feel like it was something that they weren't going to be able to overcome, a wonder goal to, kind of give them a sucker punch. So it was an impressive, fight back, and then they were comfortable from that point forward.
Yeah. Dempsey would have had a Rabona penalty, or just some dumb shit would have happened like that. No, it's pretty amazing. It's funny to talk to people who were there, and you're sort of we kind of all watched the game, but not really, especially if you're in the section, and people who watched it on replay, at home, and they were like, oh, wow, that was a better game than I even thought it was there, and the vibe was amazing.
For sure.
Pre and post, that was super cool, but then to kind of sit back and rewatch, it doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you watch games and you're like, oh, wow, we were lucky, score aside. This was not that game. This was nope, they got beat.
And you have to sort of wait to see against better teams how this is going to look. But what I said after the game was that they looked exactly how the biggest optimists would have hoped they would have looked. Okay. If you look at them on paper, and you have Smith on the left, and you have Jordan on the right, and you have sort of these other attackers interchanging in the middle, they looked exactly how you would have hoped. Which that's a really encouraging thing in the first game, whether you're playing against Cincinnati or not. So I thought that was sort of the biggest takeaway from me, that it worked exactly the way that they had hoped that it would work.
Yeah, especially, and we can talk a little bit about Rodriguez, who was, arguably man of the match, even though Jordan getting 2 goals.
He did not make the team with a weak roster is ridiculous.
Yeah, he was incredible. Probably his finishing is what kept him out of the team of the week.
Yeah,
if he would have scored one of those goals, he probably would have been in there. And it also kind of vindicates Lagerwey's philosophy of, we've got this guy who makes $1 million a year. We don't necessarily need to bring someone in right now. We want to see how this team looks up front, and then see where we're at mid-season to bring somebody in. I know a lot of people were upset about the accounting mechanism quote, but Rodriguez is a really good player, has good pedigree. Having him fully healthy, which he has not been to start the season at any point previous to this, it probably is fair to give them a chance to see how he looks. Yeah. And if he looks like that, then they probably don't need to bring someone in at his position. They can probably focus on the defensive side of the ball to bring somebody in because they're obviously pretty dynamic with those front 4 healthy and running on all cylinders. So.
Yeah, and Victor is better at trapping the ball than just about
he's
anybody
incredible,
I've
ridiculous.
ever seen live. And whether that was just him really feeling it, but he would be balls from 50 yards away, and it would just die as soon as he touched it. And there was a play where
just brings him in too. That was that one bomb that he just came across, and he just stopped it with 1 foot.
And there were a couple crosses where he would basically just play the first touch to himself around a defender, and I would agree with you that I thought that he was the best player of the game. He was really impressive, and the biggest takeaway for me, even given Jordan's comeback and everything else.
On that note, did you see that Barca is doing best goals ever from Barca, and you're like,
basically we're going to see a Messi.
Why do you need
20 Messi goals. Yeah.
But there's just been stupid things that have happened on that team, and there's I think it's Rafa Marquez. Switch 50 yards to Ronaldinho, and he just takes it off his foot. The defender bites, and anyone who's ever touched a soccer ball would use their right foot and do something with their right foot. And he's like, nope, and just lefts it to himself and then, makes the cross. And, my brain physically couldn't process it. But it was the same deal where it's just this massive, full swing, switch, curve all the way up the field. And he just goes, dink, and just puts it on the ground.
That's nuts,
Like,
man. I couldn't even
a
do it in video
million
games.
times I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Like, it's over there,
Right.
it's over my head, I miss it. Like, everything possible happens. And that's when you watch those skill players, every so often they do something and you're like,
Damn.
why would you even do that? Like, it doesn't make sense. And he's got that. And I think we've seen teases of that for other players, Marco Papa and Oba, and like these players that have that low center of gravity and just kind of go through things, but their ability to just like look at the situation and come up with something new on the spot is fascinating.
For sure, and yeah, they have had very few players in their history. I mean, not a lot of MLS teams have, granted, but they can make plays like that consistently. And if Rodriguez is that guy for them, again,
we
they're
should
gonna
all be
very, very
super
good.
okay with it. Highlight reel. We'll have our own best goals ever video at some point. MLS is probably coming up with it right now. Jordan Morris left foot.
Celebrating 10 years in year 11.
Stop. You don't get me started on this. I've had literal arguments with the Sounders front office, and they were like, why do you think it's a bad idea? And I was like, if I was on your team and you came to me with that suggestion, I would tell you to go back to your desk and start over. And they were not happy with me at all.
Hey, highlight reel, though. You can do it for that.
Yeah, I guess. Whatever. Basic math. Who needs it? Anyway.
I'm glad that this bothers you.
It's so stupid. Sorry.
I think
Anyway.
it's funny, but it's
It
it's
is
pretty
funny.
dumb.
And the best is there are people who just poke me on the internet. They're like, what do you think about this? And I'm like, stop talking to me right now. Gotta go. Anyway, let's talk about important things.
Jordan Morris.
Like Jordan Morris.
Jordan Morris' left
That
foot.
guy looked decent.
Yeah.
Also looked decent in that preseason match.
Yeah.
Like, had a couple crosses that people were like,
Duh.
wait, Jordan Morris knows how to cross on purpose? Huh.
Well, I think
Opened his game up a little bit, or at least perception of his game up a little bit. He had that all along. We just weren't looking at him that way, I think.
I can't speak to that, at least as far as what his game was or was not before I started, attending practice. But once he got back and was training at the end of the fall and was hoping to make a return, you could just tell that he had improved his game at that point. He was, I'm sure we'll talk about the left foot here momentarily, but he was, practicing with his left foot, crossing, shooting, looked good, and probably, it was unfortunate, obviously, the way the season ended because he wasn't able to get on the field. Although that, may have been a blessing in
It was probably
disguise.
better.
Yeah, because getting him back and pushing him, without having that additional 3 months of rest and training, probably wouldn't have done him any favors. So he came back and all preseason training, in the games, you could just tell that he had added something to his game. And really the question was, how long was it going to take for the rust to come off? And obviously the answer to that was not very long at all.
The most astonishing thing is his speed, man. I thought he would lose a little bit of his step, man, or something that was at least noticeable.
Yeah.
But when he's
That's
making
what
some of these
normally
runs,
happens.
yeah, right?
A little bit of difference. Might as well not.
Yeah.
Especially
that
for a
difference.
player, I mean, his whole game is based off his explosiveness, so that was a real worry.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's super encouraging to see that he didn't lose any of that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he's probably a little stronger now. A year of being
Rested.
able to rest, lift weights, run, etc. And he looked very good all preseason. And based on what he was doing in training leading up to the end of last season, I'm sure the Sounders were pretty optimistic that he was going to come in and have some new skills to show off. Especially the infamous left foot, and he had a fantastic goal. And I think silenced a lot of doubters.
Yeah.
Even though it was only one game, you got to feel that he's going to be able to bring that to more games going forward, especially with the attacking options that they have now. Even last year before Ruiz Diaz got there, the forward position was, we talked about it, incessantly, that they didn't really have anybody besides Bruin who did a good job for the team in the role that he was asked to play. Scored a lot of goals, but he wasn't the the difference maker necessarily that they were hoping to have. And so now that you have Ruiz Diaz in there, you've got Morris playing a different position out on the wing, and has obviously been practicing out there for an extended amount of time. And I think the hard work's paid off. So fantastic performance out of him.
Yeah, and I thought it was interesting, sort of the way that he was able to use space, because you're commenting about how maybe it was a little bit overblown, his lack of crossing ability. But I think he maybe got that a little bit because he's always been very not good in a one-on-one situation. He's just never been able to take on defenders and beat them off the dribble. Like, he just never has had that skill set. Probably still doesn't even now, but what he seems to have done is figured out how to just play himself into space and give himself room to play in those crosses. And maybe that's going to be the difference for him going forward, because that would be a very valuable skill to have to kind of hone that particular strength.
Yeah, and hopefully he can, he uses a little bit of space, uses the defender maybe playing off a little bit. That allows him to kind of make moves inside. He did that quite a bit, taking on defenders, and then he had a couple of passes. Dips it, and then just passes it down the line and takes off running. And so it's going to be interesting to see if he can replicate that against higher quality opposition.
Yeah, and him and Lodero very clearly vibe together. They just seem to play off of each other really well, and I don't think they've lost that at all if you saw the way that he was looking for him the whole game.
For sure. And that's a thing where probably good to set the tone here. Like, doesn't matter who Sounders we're playing. Like, everyone they're going to play in the next 2 months needs to just be like, oh,
we got to count.
We didn't know what to expect from Jordan.
We were hoping we wouldn't have to worry about.
Okay.
Damn.
Yeah, and you're going to have 3+ players like that out on the field at any given time.
4 now. Yeah,
right.
I'd say 4.
Staggering. To have to think about or account for at any given time, to the point where now, if you're Will Bruin, you're like, oh, this is going to be interesting. Just because I think now Schmetzer has some fun ways to look at things, and even frankly, not that you're going to change your formations on a regular basis, but from match to match, depending on who you're going up against, if you have a team with just this crazy, staunch defense, you can look at your offensive talent a little bit differently.
Mix it up,
yeah. And that's not necessarily a luxury that the Sounders have had
since 2014
entire season.
Right.
Well,
since 2014.
Even when they've had it, it's been 3-4 months of the season, not the entire season. Yeah, 2014 is the perfect example. Right. The ability to mix and match depending on what was going on. Needs team speed. Okay, we can do that. And that's really cool. So, in some ways, it's like, oh, let's step back to I remember when we felt like we could have a complete, annual campaign versus like chunk it up. And frankly, this is also the kind of thing that makes people who love things like U.S. Open Cup really happy, because it shows a little bit more depth on the offensive side, because that is the place where when you're playing, especially the lesser teams, you can just run rampant on some of them because they can't defend. If you start one of those players, or frankly, the person that we had been putting out there as a, first team starter, that we couldn't even get that person on an Open Cup roster when, like, Harry Shipp is super healthy, and is out there to get 90 minutes in Open Cup. Like, okay, Harry Shipp's going to do some damage, against a lot of different teams. So I think it just changes the way that they can prioritize how they use talent. So again,
we're winning the U.S. Open Cup, dude. We're winning it.
Well, yeah, so they've got their 11 defined starters. I think it's fair to say. I think we'd all agree at this point. The team that we saw on Saturday is, if healthy, the team we'll see for the majority of the season.
Yep.
They'll obviously have to do some rotation with all the midweek games that are going to be coming up. So it'll be interesting to see how, like you say, they're able to mix and match with players who, Roldan, someone who could play 3 games in 8 days, but Marshall probably not, and so it'll be interesting to see how much they mix and match when they don't necessarily need to, because the starting 11 is so good, so dynamic, that it's going to be tempting for Schmetzer just to let that ride for as long as possible. But you can't really do that with this new season setup. You're going to have to do some rotation, and you need to get some of those guys minutes anyway. Yeah. You don't want to see Hen Wallablana sitting on the bench for 28 games out of the season. You want to get him in there.
Or
Nuhu for another one.
Yeah.
And
Man,
so
it'll
watch,
when he came in, he was all over the place. Let's go.
He was actually fairly restrained at certain points. I mean, he wasn't running on the field as much as he always does. He still did his flicks and tricks, but he was, had a good performance, and that's a good platoon that they're going to have on the left side with New and Smith, and they should be able to interchange those guys. And Smith has had injury issues, so you can always give him 70 minutes instead of 90 like they did yesterday, and give Nuhu a run out. So it's nice to have that kind of depth at that position.
So needless to say, we're all feeling pretty good about the Sounders after 1 week.
Against this expansion team.
Do you remember the last 3 years? Do you remember the last 3 years?
Yeah, right?
Yeah, I think we all cried literally in our beer here.
Yeah.
For months.
Like, oh my God, are we that bad?
The Sounders are terrible.
We haven't scored a goal in a month? What?
What are goals? No. Again, it's week 1, so take it for what it is. I am a person who has watched other sports preseasons and seen teams do trash in the NFL, for instance, for 4 games and then make huge runs all season long. So you got to know kind of what the point is. I mean, the point of preseason is practice and gelling and playing together. And I think people I know that paid attention, not just the two of you, but like other people who went to Tucson or whatever it was, they were like, yeah, there were some interesting things that they didn't know, that we were going to see. So it's neat to see it actually all come together. And I think we all expected that there was a plan. But it's interesting to have it go from like, okay, we feel like we're going to be good this year to like, oh, they just devastated a team.
Yeah. Yeah, and looking at the schedule, I mean, when do you think – and there's a very clear path to them starting with like 6 straight wins.
Yeah.
If you look at the schedule. And maybe I actually thought the Cincinnati game would come down. Maybe I overrated. I didn't look closely enough at their roster, but that actually felt like the trickiest game going up against an exhibition team.
But it's like the new coach thing.
Yeah.
In literally every sport. New coach, new team, you want to come out, and play your best game you can. It's also the why you play the games thing. Like, you never know what you're going to get. I don't know if I expected LAFC to really turn out to be what they ended up being by the end of the season. Like, there was some talent on that team, of course. But did you expect it to work that quickly? Right. I didn't expect that, for sure.
Yeah.
Vela and some of these other players aside, like, it's hard to do, and that's
Vela is really good, though.
You just he is, yeah. But you just never, you never know. And this is a thing where I do feel like because there hasn't been the turnover of players, like we know they feel it. They have been on this team for 2, 3, 4 years. A lot of these guys have seen this before.
Yeah.
So for them to open up a season and frankly see the public all like, oh, okay, you guys are that cool. See you next Saturday. Yeah. Like, that's awesome. And I'm hopeful that like they are riding the same wave that the rest of us are, because it's been a chilly but awesome 48 hours. I will say.
Yep, and then we have 2 games on the weekend. Obviously, Colorado coming in off of a good draw for them, I guess.
Yeah,
in those
at
conditions.
the last second like that.
And screwing over Portland is always something that Sounders fans will appreciate.
They're gonna come in here when it's like 40, and they're like, "Oh man, it's warm over here."
Yeah. Well, Colorado's so weird. It can be like 75 in February, and then it'll be like it was on.
Wasn't it negative? Was it really
can
negative?
Be 75 over here, and then you can go over here and need a coat. So I have to tell you, I listened to. Speaking of Colorado, I listened to sports talk radio from the UK, and it's just really interesting to see, even in like the last year, how much more MLS they do pick up. And the morning show the other night, which is on like when I'm going to bed, was talking about the Colorado game, like at length. They wanted to talk about the high vis ball and like all this stuff, and I'm like, why do you care about this at all? It's Colorado.
Colorado and Portland.
And Portland. Do you even know where Portland is? And they spent like 5 minutes just discussing Colorado-Portland, like at length, which was pretty
weird.
Neat,
yeah, it's definitely the most Rapids talk that they've ever had.
Maybe ever.
The only Rapids talk.
It's like, what have we ever discussed? Coaches with interesting mustaches and high visibility ball. So that's the most Colorado talk that like Talk Sport has probably brought together. Maybe they talked about Tim Howard. I could see that. Tim maybe getting some coverage. So again, we could talk about Sounders Forever. Any other like league stuff, things you thought that were interesting this weekend?
Yeah, I thought that I watched back the extended highlights of the LAFC Kansas City game yesterday, and that was both those teams I think are really good.
Yeah,
I think that they're sort of a clear top 3 in the West. Kansas City having been really impressive in the Champions League, and they probably should have gotten at least a draw in LA, but LAFC looks really good too. I mean, all those teams are fun in the way that they play as well. So that was a really good game.
That was a hard, very entertaining, very entertaining. That's the one I watched, the full game of, and then DC and who they play? Oh, Atlanta. Atlanta's a little weird for me this year. New coach, obviously they lost the best player in the league, in Almiron, and they've had a pretty rocky start to the Champions League / season now. And, I think Atlanta fans are now the new Seattle Sounders fans as far as, people just hating on them. And so they were just absolutely relishing in that loss. The Atlanta fans were just going, just absolutely crazy on Twitter with the loss.
Yeah.
DeBoer out is already was not trending, but there was people.
It has to be a joke.
Yeah.
If it's not a joke, someone needs to take a lot of Clint Dempsey's medication.
No, someone needs to call the police and make sure that house is still standing.
Stop.
Yeah, it's just a game.
You guys just got cheaper food again. Like your team has. You know what it is? The team's panicking. They're like, if we don't have $1.50 hot dogs, no one is. We won't get 70,000 anymore here in our beautiful stadium with a round TV screen. Like no one will come back. It's gonna be okay.
Right. Yeah. They'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Week 1.
What about Fiends? Been doing catching any of the young players at all?
Yeah, first game this week, this Sunday.
Friday, right?
Friday. Sorry, I don't know why I said Sunday. This Friday, I'm going to go down and catch it. You going down?
I'm going down too, and I have not been to a game at Tacoma yet, which is bad of me.
Yeah,
but last year's team not very good.
It was horrible. It was horrible. I went to about 5 or 6 games, and it was absolutely dire for most of the season. I mean, they were super young, so I'm not going to get on them too much about that. But it was just they didn't have really any scorers, and even when they would go up a man because the other team got a red card, they'd still give up 3 goals and lose. It was just one of those things. Yeah, I mean, again, they were starting a bunch of 17 and 18-year-olds. Right. So again, I'm not going to crush them for that.
But there is a lot of energy though.
The
Defiance has caught on. I saw a ton of Tacoma Defiance shirts at the game. Just Tacoma Defiance, white T-shirts. Tacoma Defiance.
There's billboards. They've gone. They've done well hard on this, and do not ever doubt anybody who's done anything good in minor league baseball. They're gonna pull, a little bit of new ownership, the smurge of Rain and this team, and what they had been doing for Rainiers. Put all that marketing muscle together and actually let it do its job, because for years they had no idea what they were gonna do.
Right.
S2's are we going to be S2? Or are we going to be something else? We don't know. Are we moving? We don't know.
Yeah, I didn't think about that extra push
they solved all
from
of
Rain.
that.
Yeah, you're right, dude.
And now they went in. Yeah. And amazing for all involved, because I do think, Tacoma is hot and heavy for this all day.
Yeah.
Everyone I know that lives and works there is
heavy.
Yup. And they're and we don't care what you have to say, Seattle. And I'm like, whoa. Maybe back up a second, but good. But that means ownership, and there wasn't an ownership of a team. It happened to be a team that played in Tacoma.
Yeah.
This is not that.
I understand why they didn't rebrand them last year, coming off of a mandate. They probably had 2 months of notice before they just knew that they had to move down to Tacoma, and so they just weren't able to turn around a name, kits, marketing and all that kind of stuff. So it was definitely, as you said, just Yep.
Smart move.
Yeah, just you're squatting basically. They were squatting basically last year, playing down there, and so now with the new branding, the new kits, and then they've got a promising team, ownership, and working to get a new stadium down there. I'm interested to see what they are able to do with that team. It obviously justifies them moving out of Starfire for as much heartache as it caused the hardcore fans. So. It'll be interesting to see. I'm looking forward to going down there and checking it out.
To go to the game.
Yeah, I'm bummed out that I
we
can't
need
make
your
it, man.
report back next week. So bring it.
Yeah.
Going to be pretty serious. Couple other things. Some folks in the chat brought up Dio in LAFC getting a beer dumped on him in a celebration, which is like, it's one thing when the beers all get thrown up in the air and they end up everywhere. Like, I don't know if you watched the video.
I saw it.
Dude, like, switches hands.
It was ridiculous.
And dumps a beer on his head.
Yeah.
And, like, you shouldn't have to go to your IG
Diamande.
story to tell
Galaxy,
people, like, I'm Muslim and I don't want beer poured on my head. Like, it was
I don't think
super
anybody
weird.
wants beer poured on their head.
But, like, it was just one of those things
It's
where
not
I'm
one
like,
of my things I'm looking forward to.
I don't want beer poured on me, man.
that's what you went
I'll
with?
let you
Like,
buy me a beer. I'll drink it, but
you know,
pour
a
it on my
question
head.
somebody had asked earlier in the Slack that I'm in, they were like, when is that a celebration? Like, I don't know. I've seen probably like the Stanley Cup Finals where that's probably happened.
World
This
Cup.
is like
Yeah.
week 1, gold.
Right.
Oh, and
Pour a beer on your player's head.
the home fans too. That was the weird part.
You're like,
You've seen it with the away fans.
Okay. Like,
Especially at those prices. No, thanks. Yeah.
it's just,
Yeah,
that
just
was
make
just
a-
super
yeah.
weird.
That
That
was like a $17 beer.
Well, they come in like buckets or gallons. It's just
you could get the $10 carafe of Pinot Grigio. You got to get in on
I've
that.
heard you hype this up. Many times.
It is important. Anyway, the other thing was Bill Hamid just flat out saying that he's better than Brad Guzan. I am very much here for this, and I don't care about the national team at all. Like, that's
You and
awesome.
me both.
Like, we need more of that. And it's not that like you have to be mean. It's just
Mexican national team bias.
don't you want, but you
On the left
want
side.
players who want it.
Yeah,
You know, and like
Hamid's
I want it in our domestic league, and then you want to take it to the national team discussion. Okay, like,
Yeah.
that's what this team. And to be honest, there's no personality for the U.S. men's national
Yeah.
team. It's just a team with a bunch of players on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Woods,
pretty much
that's-
interchangeable.
the kid over in Germany,
Pasilic.
Woods, and that's all I can think of, man.
Yeah, there's no ownership,
Yeah.
leadership. It just seems like a bunch of good players.
I mean, the
Good is marginal.
Federation
maybe,
did take
but-
like a year and a half to find somebody. Eh?
And they got
And
some.
even
They got
then-
some young guys that are interesting,
They
but they're
do.
at least like 3 or 4 years away. Hamid, he could be really good relatively quickly, theoretically.
or not. Like,
Yeah.
who knows? But that was interesting to see. Again, like week 1 of MLS. Like, we're gonna stir the pot in two elements at once. You know, and I don't feel like that's been a thing. Definitely not for keepers in a while on the national team. But just there's been a lot of like passive players who happen to have been selected, and they're like, "Oh, thanks for selecting me. Cool."
Yeah, and even around the league, I think that there was sort of that general generation of American players who came up when it was all a little bit more tenuous, and they were all just kind of like really happy to have a career, which is good. Like, good for them for cherishing the moment. But they were all just very workmanlike.
Don't rock the boat.
Don't rock the boat, like all that kind of stuff. So I think that the league is changing in that way for sure. You bring in Ibrahimovic, you bring in some of these bigger personalities. It's a lot more entertaining to follow when you have stuff like that happening. For sure.
Yeah, and you remember the LA Galaxy, just on a league level, the Galaxy, complaining about Portland diving, and they put out that Shooting Stars meme that went viral, and then you got reports that MLS wasn't happy about it, and we're telling them to knock it off because they don't want that kind of stuff, even though that's the kind of thing that gets people talking about the league. So I wonder if the players are just kind of taking their cues from the league as far as that's concerned, and so hopefully that's changing a little bit because it makes obviously the league much more interesting to follow when you hear stuff like that.
Speaking of Ibra, I very much want the Galaxy to let up the most goals ever, purely because we've got to get that one out there. If he wants to win every award or break every record, in MLS, they need to get that one too. That one's really important.
And they might, that defense.
And it means that the Galaxy are trash again. So that's cool. I have to tell you,
Despite
talk about a
MLS's
city,
best efforts.
Talk about a city where in like 10 years they're going to be a whole bunch of people and they were like, I was never a Galaxy fan. I've always liked LAFC. That's going to happen.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, two very different directions.
Already.
Yeah. The Galaxy are becoming the Mets.
Yeah.
And not exactly like a die-hard sports town as it is. Like, it's very fickle down there.
Do you want to spend the next 27 minutes trash talking Los Angeles? Because I am here for this as well. Matt's like, I need to sell books everywhere.
Yeah.
Speaking of selling books, where's the best? Does any place make more money for Matt Pentz if we purchase your book there?
No.
No.
But I would say, but like for me, I'm just answering the question. For me, that doesn't make any difference. But I would prefer support the independent booksellers around here. Elliott Bay's great. Third Place Books is great. Anywhere around here, I would rather people support it that way if they can, just because they're the ones that are kind of propping up the industry right now.
Support your local bookseller, and there's like an asterisk that says not a global multinational. Is that what you're saying?
That's implied.
But if
for sure.
someone happens to buy it there, you're okay with it.
Yeah.
Got it.
I get a cut of that too. I'm just saying. My preference would be buy it from somewhere like that.
Got it.
Are you going to put it in audio?
I don't think there are plans for it yet. I think it kind of depends on how it sells.
Gotcha.
So
Let me know if you need any
more
voice-
incentive.
Let me know if you need any voice work.
Oh, look at this.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Good hustle. All right.
Yeah, let's go. It'd be great. Audio, man. So many people.
That was, by the way, one of the weirder things that I've ever done in CenturyLink Stadium is we couldn't hear
dude.
Ugo in the stadium, and I actually went to the house and was like, "Oh, hey, can you turn up Ugo up there?" And I texted him, and he's like, "Oh yeah, make sure you do that." And I was like, "This is weird that they actually are like, oh yeah, we'll go do that right now."
Yeah, yeah.
What?
And it was a little bit off too for this game for certain parts of it. I think during like the which part I can't remember. It was the ceremony. I don't know. But there were some parts where they're working on the volume.
Turn your mic up.
Me? It's on.
All right.
Oh, what a coincidence.
That's actually really funny.
Funny.
Apparently, they were like, "Were you talking about today or in the stadium?" We probably broke your microphone, so hopefully not.
I can yell, but not. Yeah.
Anywho, now I want to go talk about that friendly for a second because you had a good.
That was fun, man. That was a lot of fun. Got to do that voiceover promo for Nico, which was so much fun to do.
That got
so
some
fun.
Serious play on.
Yeah, dude, it was fun, but it was yeah. I had a ton of fun. It was really surreal. I was talking with my brother, and he's like, dude, 10 years ago we were watching, that game, watching Montero getting chills after that first goal and seeing the stadium go nuts, and now, yeah, to do a voiceover for them for that game and to be at the stadium announcing for that, getting to do Jordan Moore's substitution, even though I would have liked to have done a goal because it didn't score one, but to do his substitution on the pitch, I was like, oh my God, let's go. Oh my God, I got chills about just getting ready to do that, dude. Oh my God.
So, by the way, did you buy all the Girl Scout cookies ever?
Yeah.
All of you? What kind?
I got plenty. If y'all want any, let me know. I got the hookups. My 9-year-old niece is selling for the first time. Samoa's is highly recommended, but we will sell you whichever you prefer, even if you like tag-alongs, like somebody said today, whatever.
So wait, a person said that out loud?
Yeah, on Twitter and everything, dude.
Did you report it?
I wanted to report it as insulting, but I got my
against
niece
me or
sell
someone
cookies.
else. Everyone, frankly.
Yeah.
This is globally insulting.
What is your favorite cookie, Matt?
Well, I had Thin Mints yesterday because Mom got them on the ferry, which is a very good hustle, by the
Going
way.
on the
Selling
ferries?
it on the
Did
ferry
not
is a
think about
very
that. Genius.
captive audience there.
That's
People waiting in
genius.
line. So that's fresh in my mind. So we're going with that. That would also
That
be pretty
is a good idea. I saw two yesterday. It was yesterday. Wow. In Ballard, very much near coffee shops. And I was like,
You know what? Now I'm just going to go to
that
the
seems
light
like
rail
that's a
stations.
good idea.
Tell my niece, go to the light rail station.
Mickey's
in the
got
morning.
probably like 20 boxes of Girl Scout
Yeah.
cookies.
Yep.
Nope.
Yo,
not
it's-
currently.
man, it is a crazy hustle, man. Those things are expensive, but you can still buy them for $5 or $4.20 for my niece. But man,
$5
Quick
for 4 for
math on
20.
that one.
dude, they
That's
make
not a
$1 for
deal
each
at
box
all.
for their local charity of choice. $1.
Counting these.
And you have to commit to like 300. You have to like literally, you're buying 300 boxes no matter what. And if you don't sell them, you got to pay for them. That's like $1,500 worth of cookies. I was
You
like,
could just
oh
eat
my
'em.
God.
Just sit there, kill a sleeve or two of Thin Mints. It's okay.
Yeah. I mean,
It's going to be fine.
you know, as long as most of them are Samoas, I'm fine. But, and I don't know how they do it. But well, actually, I do know how they do it because they already sold like 500. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of you. Mika, like my niece you already got 500, but whew, $1,500 worth of cookies.
That's nuts.
It is.
So let's look ahead a little bit, and then let Matt talk some more because I'm sure he
Yes.
has other things he wants to say. But so coming up this weekend, big matchup against a powerhouse.
The mighty Colorado Rapids.
They might bring a high visibility ball just for fun, but no. So Colorado coming in this week, another Saturday night game. Keep them coming.
Yes.
As long as we can,
yes.
please.
There's none after June.
No weekday games.
Were this 2 months from now, I'd be like, classic trap game, just because you always start
Yeah.
looking past teams like this. I don't think that's what
Oh, no.
Sounders will be like at all. But if you were to make just like short-term, quick predictions,
3-1 Sounders. Let's go.
3-1?
No question. No question.
Okay.
Well, I think that is.
You asked for a quick one?
All right. Quick prediction would be, I'll say 2-1.
Why are you always letting up goals?
Well,
He goes to the practices.
they got
He's like,
right? They have Kai Kamara, who's is good, and he can get a header on occasion. So, and he played well against the Sounders in Vancouver last year. He actually killed them. So, I could see him getting a goal.
Going 2-0. Should be pretty comfortable, I would think. I also just think so lowly of the Rapids always.
Same,
They are
in
missing.
general.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
they are missing their center back because he got a red card. So that's helpful.
Western Conference Finals.
might
I'm
move
still
that
like,
to
meh,
4-1.
it's Colorado. Don't care.
back.
It's
Forwards.
that would be a great, like, if anybody ever gets like interested in MLS outside of the MLS bubble, a Rapids like Western Conference Final 30 for 30 would be really interesting.
I can't think of anything
They
less
were very
interesting.
bad for so long. Made it to a conference championship game. Could have very much won that
Yeah.
game, and then immediately got awful again.
And terrible.
They had like a
Really,
34
really
game hot streak that made no sense.
They really did. That season it's
they-
bizarre.
and they-
They
It
had
makes
not
no
lost
sense.
a single 1-0 game, I think, all year until they lost to us in that game,
Yeah.
that playoff game. It was great.
It-
It was
yeah.
so good.
Yeah, that was a weird team. I don't know what to say about that.
By the way, we have some great comments. Try putting Nutella on the shortbread. It's magical. Do you know who that's from? You get one guess. Yep. Emily said, I like tagalongs. Fight me. In all caps. So
Let's go. Let's go.
So that's a thing. There were Girl Scouts selling at the March to the Match. That is accurate.
Savvy.
Again,
Also a good idea.
probably a good idea.
You know that they have to register and get the okay from their troops or the locations that they have to sell at? Just so you guys know.
Learning
It's
so
very,
much.
Yeah.
It's very organized and very
Girl Scout hierarchy is
yeah.
tight control.
Girl,
apparently.
yeah.
Pretty nuts.
Yeah.
All right,
and you
so-
can't like post on social media. Like, yeah, it's crazy. The rules are crazy. No one's bitter.
Wow. There's some
Very
there's
bitter,
some
former Girl
animosity
Scouts
from
here.
clearly a former Girl Scout in the audience here who's upset that they were not allowed to set up shop outside grocery stores et al. Door-to-door only?
Nice.
Yeah. We had somebody come into our floor, and she easily had 300 boxes of cookies with her. Like, the dolly came into the
Yep.
office with these things. And they just set up at, like, a conference room, and people had to, like, come by and, like, sign out their cookies. It's like, this is the most efficient thing I've seen in a really long
It's a little
time.
disturbing, actually.
It's actually nuts. But
They are good cookies. Though.
I just worked there.
Yeah, they're
So,
good. I love Samoa so much. So much.
Oh, cookies. See, now I want cookies. And I
I
can't.
Aren't you still doing keto?
I am.
All
So
right.
no
Yeah,
Girl
you're
Scout
looking
cookies
good,
for
man.
me.
You're looking good, dude.
First year in my entire
Yeah.
life that I have
Rocking
not
shorts
purchased
at the game and all. I was
Girl
like,
Scout
man.
cookies. I do
Oh,
always
looks
wear
good.
shorts.
Well, that's
that
just-
is very
that's
much
just
on
insanity.
brand for me.
Yeah, right.
And by
That has
brand, I
nothing to
mean
do-
stupid.
Yeah. Yes.
Because do you know who's colder now?
Yeah.
Cold right now.
Yeah, actually.
I did steal someone's hat after the game. Shout out to Emily.
Oh, speaking of hats,
Sorry, I
dude,
stole your
can
hat.
I just say thank you? Finally, whoever made the decision to bring fitted hats, I finally have a Sounders fitted hat. Oh my God! It
I
took
do-
them not 10 years, but take all my money, man. I can't wait till I can see the blue at the store, the blue one. Yeah, I'm gonna get all kinds of fitted hats.
You gotta get the beanie. It's pretty
It's
hot.
hard to get, man. That and the scarf.
The
are
black
super
and
hard
pink
to get.
beanie.
Yeah.
Pretty nice. And I'm not usually a fan with like the pom-pom at the
no.
top kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I
Me
definitely
neither, obviously.
rocked that at the bar on Saturday night. So anyway, so we've got about 15 more minutes left. Matt, anything else you want to throw out about the book or Sounders this season?
How much
or
is
just
the book, man?
stuff in
I probably
general?
missed that at the beginning. Sorry.
Actually, no, you did not.
So it is $16 American. I think
Oh
it's
my God.
$19.50 Canadian
Let's go. That's
from
a-
my Canadian publisher. Yeah.
That's a deal. Even at twice the price, that's a deal. Let's go. That's a
Two
Yeah.
for
bargain at
32.
twice the
Just
price.
buy two then.
Girl Scout
Yeah.
cookie pricing.
2 for 40.
Yes,
2
yes.
for 40 or 1 for 20. Let's go.
You're like, that's not better.
Yeah, that's the same price.
All right, so we know how much the book is.
Yes.
Do you win a bike if you sell like a certain number of books? Someone's sister won a bike because they sold so many.
Yeah, I don't know that I hit that limit. But yeah, this is going to be a test for me because you were saying earlier about how I'm not good at business, and that's very true. So this is like
I was just
this
being
is going to be a
facetious.
test.
Now,
Yeah, no, it's would I have gone into journalism if I was good at business?
Come on. You
The
gotta
answer
get
is
your
no.
projections.
Their answer is
Let
no.
us know your projections.
That's
What are
a
your
hard
projections?
no.
Sourcewell journalism major.
But yeah, so actively trying to get it out there and be a little bit more of a salesman.
Yeah.
'Cause
Okay.
I do think it's a good read.
I mean that's good. Is it better than Jeff Baker's book?
Who?
Wow, coming in hot. Do you want to get into the media? Did you hear about him in the media game?
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about
Wait,
the
hold
media.
on.
Yeah.
We want all the tea.
My
all
Diet
the tea,
Coke and
all the-
I
all
want to
the-
know.
All the juice.
So just Matt can fill in the main detail because he knows more than I. But for those who don't know, there was a media game after the media day for the Sounders on Thursday. They had practice at CenturyLink. We did all the interviews, and Garth and the front office held their annual preseason presser. And then after that was over, 50 of us were dumb enough to agree to play in a full-length, full-time soccer
Yeah,
match.
90 minutes.
90
It was
minutes.
very
Full
ambitious.
field.
wow.
Which it was initially 90. I think there was some lobbying to get it down to 60, 2 30-minute halves. That didn't work, apparently. And so we played a full 90-minute game. There were basically hockey shifts, players coming in and out of the game because we were
Man.
all out of shape
That would
pretty
have been
much.
a rough announcing
Yeah,
gig.
oh, it was absolutely brutal. And I played as little as possible. I was happy to just periscope it from the sidelines and tell jokes. I did get on the field for about 20 minutes and made a fool of myself.
Yeah, I heard the
and,
owner was legit.
Adrian was definitely one of the best players on the
Yeah, he
team.
was very impressive. That
yeah,
was a
very,
surprise.
very good, very good. Scored a couple of goals.
Wow.
And there were not too many injuries, save a couple, which I will lead that into Matt.
Well, and for the record, my team defeated Mickey's 9-3.
Yeah,
Oh, 9-3.
I was
So we have that
too
out.
tired to look at the scoreboard. So
We
I don't
also had
recall that.
Chris Henderson, which felt
Yeah.
very unfair.
Yes, it was extremely.
Hold on, he was
unfair.
playing?
Oh yeah. He
What?
was- yeah.
What? That is not fair.
It was
What?
not at all.
And he
That
was-
guy
got a ringer.
does. That guy does steps ridiculously well.
Yeah,
Like-
he runs the stairs
Yeah.
before every
If,
game.
if
home
you're in
and
the
away.
stadium, like for Tifo Crew or something, and he's just moving along, and it's not slow. Like that's hard to do. Like do a couple of them, and then you're like, why would anyone do this? And he just keeps on going. It's pretty amazing.
yeah,
He just runs the steps?
yeah,
Yes.
before every game.
What?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's his that's how he gets out the stress, I guess. So
Wow.
that's his thing. Yeah, so we had a couple casualties. Jackson Feltz of KJR tweaked his knee. I think he's okay.
Well, the problem was he tweaked his knee in the first half, and so we pulled him out. And to start the second half, he goes right back out there and is hobbling along for about 3 minutes until I pointed out to Alex, who's the media guy for the Sounders, and Alex immediately got him off. Said, you're done for today. Yeah, I mean, we all signed waivers, but I was
going to say,
like there's
you
some
signed a
liability
waiver.
for actually setting him out there again. So got him off the field. So he was pretty banged up. And then what happened to Baker?
So Jeff collided with Andrew Harvey, who, if you've ever met Andrew, pretty wide guy,
Big guy.
And Jeff sort of walked off gingerly. And at the time, I was like, man, coming off early, not playing anymore. It's like, man, that's a little bit soft at least. And then it turns out he broke 2 ribs and dislocated 2 others.
Now I feel like absolute trash for making Jeff Baker jokes.
Oh, and then I was like, having known that, I'm like,
Not
I'm
really.
very impressed that he stood there for the rest of the game and just sort of stood on the sidelines and hung out.
Wait,
I'm
for
like,
real?
that's pretty impressive. That's
wow.
a serious injury. So that was definitely the most intense injury.
Yeah.
I didn't know that one was going.
How was the guy that Dave knocked out? I saw the Dave highlight. He knocked some dude out.
Oh, I can't remember that one specifically. I don't think there was anything else more serious than that.
Okay.
I did scrape my knee, so that was a little painful, but
I
did have
a turf burn.
I had a Band-Aid for a couple of days, so that was unfortunate, but otherwise I'm okay. But yeah, it was a fun experience. I'd have to say.
Out on the field.
Who was the player of the game?
Oh, I don't think we voted, or there wasn't one in particular.
No.
Right, so if you guys had to pick one, who would it be?
Henderson. Well, let's take Henderson out of it because he's obviously a ringer. So I'd say Adrian probably.
Yeah,
He's,
I would agree.
Yeah, he was the
Yeah,
best
Adrian.
Schmetzer did
athlete.
post on Sounder at Heart tonight, so he gave the Rave Green team an 8. And he said, together, the squad looked great. I had to start Hanauer. He's my boss. But he delivered. Tactically organized, fitness level high, except for 1 or 2. And the enthusiasm for the game made this a benchmark for future media games.
Dude.
I'm
Jeff
not getting
Baker
involved in any
solid.
future media games.
Ryan Krasnew with an MVP performance. Very proud of the group. Team Nightfall, however,
However, never like a however.
received a 5.
That's generous. That's actually very generous.
Overall, poor performance by Hinton squad.
Man, I had predicted Nightfall would win. Man, that's too bad.
Needed to replace coach at halftime as he was so upset with the players.
Alan Hinton was the coach, and he basically
Team
left us at
defending
halftime.
was ready, non-existent.
Yeah.
Attack floundered after they scored first goal of the match. Even roster changes orchestrated by Alex Caulfield couldn't help outcome. For this match to continue on a yearly basis, we need to have an opponent that can compete so the fans get their money's worth.
The fans being the coach and the players.
I don't think there literally no
Even
no
when he's
fans in
just
the series.
trash talking the media,
Yeah.
quotes are amazing.
That's awesome. That's so awesome, dude.
That Schmetzer guy.
Who came up with the idea?
There was some talk about it at practice a couple of times, and I think it just kind of blossomed from there, really. And the front office was all about it because Moreno.
Yeah.
He was pretty good. He was feisty.
Yeah, he was all right.
feisty.
Well,
Okay.
actually, so Schmetzer was
feisty.
kind of digging into Nico.
That's not surprising. That's not surprising.
All game, sort of giving him trash talk. And Nico, he was actually after the game, he was kind of he was like, oh, I don't know why Brian was digging into me so much, but. For some background, Nico has sort of been breaking a bunch of news with the South American players and sort of has a lot of insider info there to the degree that he's broken some pretty good stories. And, that means that he respects you on some level.
Yeah.
I
That,
remember
that
when
he's
I was athletic 20 years ago in high school, man, the coaches that wrote you, it's because they demand more of you because they want you that you're a good player.
So it was definitely Schmetzer was getting his digs in for all the Roman Torres stories.
Yeah, I think that's 90% about that.
But I like
Literally
Good
stop writing these
reflection on
stories,
you.
please.
That's awesome.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
They should
So,
open.
I
They should
think
open
those-
that game to fans next year.
I
Well, I
mean,
think
Mickey
there's-
has already said he will offer up his slot to
Yes.
anyone.
Yeah.
You should do it for
will
charity.
auction it off for charity, and there probably is a charity angle that they could do with it. So this was obviously done on a month's notice,
Right.
a month and a half's notice. So if they decide to do it next year, I'm sure they could put something together and get a few fans to be able to play on the field. Because it was nice, everyone got the jerseys personalized. So that was obviously a
Who
nice
was the best
take-home
player
gift.
out of the Spanish media?
Felipe was pretty good.
Yeah,
Felipe?
Yeah, he was a
pretty good.
very
I would hope so,
composed
man.
center
Yeah,
back.
He's
Yeah.
been coaching this club for a while. And all right. How about his wife, Carito? How'd she do?
She was good too.
Yeah.
There was one red card as well.
Oh, what?
Yes. I think it was for dissent.
Yeah.
Oh,
she was
red
a-
for
She was
dissent?
asking for it.
For Carito? Did she get it?
Who was?
Who got the red?
I don't even totally remember who it was.
Yeah, I don't remember who it was. It was one of our female athletes,
Gotcha.
and she was
Athletes.
definitely asking for it.
Like physically, like she was like,
Yeah, she was
literally,
like, yeah, give me the red
a
card, please.
because I want to get a red card.
I need the rest.
That would have been good for you. Like Mickey's like, I got my 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
Red card.
Yeah, I was-
He's about to, like,
well, I think
Dave, sorry about this.
were you
Dave.
guys
Elbow to the face.
were you guys down to 10 after that? I think you were.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you couldn't do that. In the minute 30, that would have destroyed the team.
I
that
mean,
was already
you
on perilous
could have.
ground.
It really depends. Like if you're trying to sandbag,
Nah,
make the game
nah.
interesting.
Just my presence out there was enough to sandbag. So, so yeah, I hope they do it next year. I think they will because
Yeah.
it got a good, good reaction.
Cool.
And so yeah, like you said, there may be a, small charity component you can add to it as well, and get a couple of fans involved. So, because I'm sure there's no shortage of people who would like to play a game on CenturyLink Field. And get a free jersey out of the deal.
Yeah, and
Most
they
likely
had like
not, yeah.
piped in crowd noise.
Yeah,
and
that was
stuff.
pretty amusing.
Went
Yeah.
all in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was cool.
Yeah, definitely
Yes.
have
Super
to.
cool.
If anybody wants to watch it, and I don't know why you would,
No,
I did
don't.
I did Periscope it, so you can
I'll
go.
catch that.
I'll plug
I'm
myself
gonna be on a
real
flight
quick.
on Wednesday, so I'll definitely
Yeah.
look it up and catch. a
Just
little
find
bit of it.
on Periscope Turner ESQ, and you'll find the Periscoped action.
Nice.
So.
This is how Mickey inflates his Periscope numbers.
Oh,
right
yes.
here.
Yeah.
From
Yeah, I see
18
you.
to 32.
I see you. Gotcha. So any surprises, other things that kind of popped out for you this weekend?
Over the weekend.
Yeah.
A big win for the Loons. I think,
Yeah.
I think
How did
Minnesota's-
Ozzy do? I didn't watch. How did Ozzy do?
He played very, very well. Had a very sort of vintage Ozzy game.
Got a nice
I mean,
yellow. Probably should have gotten
Yeah,
a
yeah.
second yellow at
Yeah,
some
he
point.
got a yellow at like the 25th minute. Completed
him
like
and Char are on
95% of his
brand.
passes.
Love it.
Yeah.
It was very Ozzy.
Yeah.
I find Minnesota to be a very likable team. They have the new stadium. Their fans are very sort of
Yeah.
devoted
They're
for
kinda
being
like-
very bad.
You kind of root for.
I'd like to see the
You can't-
Loons make the playoffs.
Yeah, you can't really hate on Minnesota. They haven't done anything to anybody.
Yeah. So that was surprising though, to go up to Vancouver and get a win there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's certainly a decent.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Vancouver obviously they revamped their entire team. What 20 players did they change over? Which
I think
is
it ended up
insane.
being like 21 or 22.
Yeah,
How did
it's
you do? I
crazy.
didn't watch.
The
How did
Sounders
Freddie
only
do?
have 23 roster players right now, so that tells you how much turnover there was in Vancouver. So, yeah, that was impressive.
What do you think the outlook for the season is, man? What's your prediction for the season?
I think it's very, very high. I mean, I think that their goal should be to be hosting MLS Cup. I think that they have.
Okay. Got
that-
my attention, sir. I didn't know that. I was hoping we'd make like, but now you're saying host and let's go. Okay.
I think they're good enough to do that. That should be the goal. They've been very open about this is their window right now. They're going to go for it. If they can stay healthy, which that's always going to be the caveat. I mean, they have the pieces. If you look around MLS, I think that they're close to the best team.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was already excited.
That's what I would
Now You're
say.
taking me to a whole nother level, dude. I was like, it didn't even dawn on me to host. I was like, I think we can make it. But hosting, now you're saying hosting.
Because that is like kind of the final frontier for them, right? I mean, they've won pretty much
Oh
everything
my
else.
God. Imagine
Should.
hosting. Oh my God.
I had a question from Eileen, and I don't know if I can follow your exuberance over there with this question. I think I know the answer to this because we talked about it a little bit pre-show, but Eileen wants to know what story or player are you looking forward to doing a story on or doing something with this season?
This year, have something coming up with Raul based off his kind of origin story in Peru. And yeah, he's just, I mean, obviously an integral part. I think he has an interesting background. I'm looking forward to that. I have something down the line with Kim Keehee too.
Oh,
which I think
thank
will be
you,
exciting.
man. Yeah.
I think Kim's gonna. I mean, anything.
Yeah,
with
there's a
Raul
lot
is
for
gonna
us
get
to like
attention, but
learn more
I
about
think
it,
people
man.
want to know about Kim.
Yeah,
for
for sure.
Yeah, for
he's
someone who's
private
played
on
such
Twitter.
an important
I like-
role. Yeah.
Trying to get the follow and he's private on Twitter. You know that?
He hasn't accepted your.
Not yet.
Yeah.
I'm like, come on, man. I'm looking forward
You
to
should-
announce you at the game someday, hopefully.
Nice. All right, those are those are good answers. That's
great
stuff
answers,
people
dude.
people
I
be
got
looking out
even
for.
more hype.
What else? What else other than the book this week? That's big stuff. And we'll have you recap kind of where you're going to be in the next couple of days. But anything else you're working on this week other than maybe previewing next weekend's match?
That's sort of some longer term stuff right now. And it's just kind of head down for the book stuff for the next couple days, and then back into athletic mode for the next while. So,
all right. So give us we got a couple minutes left. Give us what you're up to rest of the week, where we can find you.
Yeah, so the big thing is tomorrow, Ryan House, Seattle, from 6 to 8. Sort of the book launch party. Elliott Bay Books will be there.
Cool.
Selling books on site.
So people can buy their book, or they can bring their book so you can autograph it with some sort of amazing message.
Yeah, I will be autographing barely legible messages to people. You can come and have that done, personalized. You might not be able to tell, but it will be personalized.
Okay, so that's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow, and then and just kind of the following weekend on the 17th, I'll be at Bainbridge Island doing a book event there. But the rest of the week, just kind of back into Sounders mode. But it should be at all the local bookstores. Should be in stores.
Awesome.
Go out and get it. That would be great.
There's a small local in Buren bookstore. Good chance it'll be there too.
Yeah. They tried to coordinate with a lot of even the smaller local books. Should be.
That's awesome.
Yeah, should be pretty much everywhere, I think.
Excellent.
How soon can they?
The internet broke.
So they can buy it online as well. Sorry, buy it online, bookstores.
Are we live?
On your Twitter, we can follow links.
Oh. Yeah, so there's a link on there. Definitely on Amazon, it's on there too. And the publisher website is ecwpress.com.
What was it?
ecwpress.com out of Toronto.
Gotcha. Nice.
We live? Did we lose it?
Maybe. It's like 9 p.m. happens and the internet's like, cool. So I think we're back on. Yes. Yeah. Any last things you want to share with?
I mean, I guess the sign-off note would just be to sort of just say thank you to Sounders fans and readers in general. I mean, people that subscribe to The Athletic, people that are buying the book. I would not be able to be doing what I am doing without the support of the community here, and they've been really supportive. It's really been cool to sort of see that and have people put that up and be able to willing to subscribe and put their own money, and I know that that's not a small thing, so I really appreciate all of that, and I just want to sort of say thank you to everybody for
That's
that.
awesome. Well, thank you for coming out
man,
again.
Thanks for making time again, dude.
Yeah,
Appreciate
anytime,
it.
guys. I like it down here.
Yeah.
Usually we're in some sort of like mid-season doldrum and we have nothing positive.
It was,
Today we
this
had
is
like
the most
left-footed
optimistic
goals.
show that I've ever been on.
like,
Seriously.
like ever. So no, that's great. So thank you for coming out. You guys have anything else you want to say before we hop off?
LFG.
Not really. Subscribe to The Athletic.
Yeah, I got my subscription.
Save your $16. It's 3 point whatever boxes of Girl Scout cookies.
Yeah.
Or you could buy Matt's book.
Yeah.
So get in. Cool. All right. Well, thank you everybody for coming out.
Yeah,
Thanks, fam. Literal fam of a guest.
Awesome.
Thanks, fam.
Thanks, everybody.
And we'll see y'all next week.